streaming. This is connecting. We're going to go offline here. We'll make sure,
Okay, I believe we are streaming now.
I believe that we are. Hey, before we get too far into this, you want to close that door? I think that was probably me that left it open.
You violated my natural rights.
Spare me the routine, Ventura.
Okay, so Bloody Bill, that's me.
3%er.
That's what they call me.
So now we already had the audio for this show, of course. This one's going to be a little bit different because we actually lost the video for some reason. It didn't save, so that's why we're doing the live version now. We figured we'd have more success with this.
Yes, this is our debut doing live.
Exciting time.
So
the truth
hopefully somebody's watching.
Hopefully. And if they're not, you know what? It's still going to be loaded up on here. We'll just put 1,000 tags in there so people can find it.
We didn't advertise that we were going to go live.
Hand me that one, would you?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Ah, what a great show. Everything's just in arm's reach.
Yeah, everything.
Okay.
So, what do we got for today?
You were taking the show. In our little warm-up exercises here, you were putting the screws to me.
A little bit,
which is fine, without getting too biblical. The Bible at least says that you should always be prepared to give a defense for the belief that's in your heart.
Yes.
Okay, well, on this show, we don't deal with beliefs. We deal with truth and facts.
Truth and facts.
Okay? Beliefs are nothing. Maybe we should touch on that for just a second, because it's something that bothers me.
All right.
Expressions like, well, that's true to you, or, oh, believe this, believe that. But you know what? It doesn't matter what you believe. It only matters what's true. I don't have to believe that you're sitting here in front of me for it to be true. People say that kind of thing all the time. Oh, I can't believe it! You don't have to believe it! It is! Am I wrong here? It's maybe unrelated a little bit, but just something I wanted to touch on real quick. Because we don't deal in beliefs. We deal with the truth, and it doesn't require your belief. In fact, It doesn't require your belief.
Right? Yeah.
Or mine.
If I don't believe I'm sitting here, there's something wrong.
Okay. Authority.
Authority. Respect my authority.
Mm.
All right. Authority. What is that? Is that a real thing?
No, it's nothing. It's a word. So it exists in that sense.
Okay. What's the definition of that? We don't have to bring it up necessarily, but
authority, the exercising of power or control or influence over somebody else.
To enforce obedience.
Yes, to enforce obedience, conformity. Yeah, that's what authority. That's what the definition of authority is. We have, all this authority in America. We have all these laws that are, enforced by this authority. But we still have the highest prison population in the entire world. So how real
nobody's really obeying, are they?
Nobody's really obeying. And I ask you, that's just one way to prove that this notion of authority, it's not real, because it's not producing the results that the people who have authority want it to produce.
Okay, I see that. Now, along the lines of authority not being real, let's get down to how it's not real.
Okay.
We deal in facts, right?
Facts. We deal in facts. We deal in truth.
Truth. Stuff that's absolute and maybe a lot of things that are. I hate to equate it to a 5 cents thing,
Okay.
but because you could apply that to maybe natural law also. But show me anywhere that I can understand with my 5 senses that authority exists.
I can't.
Can I see it? Can I smell it? Taste it? Touch it? Hear it?
No. In the three-dimensional world, according to the laws of physics, things like authority do not exist. I was talking with you a little bit, and you wanted me to bring it up, this example. I want to talk about communication.
Yes, I really like this idea you had.
Communication exists. It exists whether you accept it, whether you like it, whether you believe in it. It exists. Now, even to the deaf and dumb and the blind, there are still forms of communication. You can communicate by a touch. You can communicate with a physical, visual representation of something, whether it's, some kind of mechanics that you work out in a mathematical equation to explain something.
Okay.
Whether it's a visual aid that's artistic, and that would cover a form of communication like expression. You communicate with body language, touch. You can communicate with sound. And even if you can't hear, you can communicate with hands. You can communicate with eye contact. I mean, there's numerous ways that communication happens. And we use human beings because that's what we are.
Mm-hmm.
That communication happens one human being to another. And it doesn't matter if you think it's true.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you accept it. It doesn't matter if you embrace it. Communication happens because it exists. And communication exists because it happens.
Okay.
Authority, you can't touch it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it, you can't see it, you can't hear it. It's intangible. It's not something that happens. If authority were true,
All right.
the bureaucrats that work over at the state capitol over there, those within the Senate, the people in the Supreme Courts, the Drug Enforcement Agency, says that they have the authority to decide what I possess and put in my body, and they come up with a list of all these things. They've claimed that they don't have the authority, or that they have the authority to tell me that I can't possess marijuana. Okay? So now, I am going, for the purposes of this demonstration, to communicate with the federal government, hi DEA, okay, all of Richard Nixon's war on drug proteges. I'm going to communicate with them. I'm communicating with them right now. I'm using my hands, I'm using my eyes, I'm using my voice, I'm using body language, I'm using a camera. It's recording the audio and the visual. There's numerous ways right now that you could say that I am communicating with the federal government. That exists because that is actually happening right now in real time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show you that they have absolutely no authority because right here I have a 1/4 ounce of marijuana.
Oh!
It's in my possession. Right here.
You got the pot.
I've got pot. I've got a pipe. I'm going to smoke this pot. Now, if authority was a real thing, and they really had the authority to tell me I can't do this, then according to the laws of physics,
Mm-hmm.
I should be physically incapable of ingesting this marijuana. Don't even touch the fact that I'm outside of the realms of physics in possession of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Now let's see here. I saw that it was burning, and now I can see some smoke leaving your mouth.
Yes.
So you must have actually ingested that marijuana.
Yes, I did. So my question now is, When is the DEA going to come and take me away?
Yeah,
In what way has this misconceived notion of authority precluded me from doing something?
yeah. The sky didn't fall down when you did that. You didn't. Physics allowed you to do that by picking that up. You know, motor functions, putting it all together, and then doing it.
Right, which is the same as, I mean, this all works in conjunction with the analogy of communication. Communication is something that you can actually see or feel or witness or experience with your five senses, because it's something that really, in reality, in truthfulness, exists. But obviously,
and in real time.
And in real time. Now, I just demonstrated an activity via expression and communication that is an obvious controversion to the idea of authority that the DEA and the federal government has. How was I able to do that if that authority really existed?
Yeah, it's obviously just nothing happened. You
Still
can,
nothing happening.
anybody else who's watching can see that nothing has happened.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that happened was you had a little bit of marijuana. So where does this, what's the root where this idea or this notion of authority come from? How does one person get to where they think that they have authority over another human being?
Well, that's very, very left-brained. That's very left-brain and fight syndrome in the R complex, this controlling thing. It's difficult for me to say what would lead to such megalomania that somebody would want to exercise complete and total control over somebody else that they don't even know. I can say, being obviously an area of our special interest and study, that I can say with certainty that the reason why people get to the place where they feel that they have to give somebody else authority over them is because of the sheer burden of personal responsibility. Personal responsibility, personal accountability, understanding that no matter what group you belong to, what ideas you hold, what beliefs you have, the understanding that when the shit hits the fan, ultimately the individual has to be accountable for their actions and how those actions impact the world around them. A lot of people don't want that responsibility. And it is a shortcoming, but you have to understand that even subconsciously they understand the weight of their decisions and actions as it relates to impacting somebody else. And it's not a responsibility that people want to bear anymore.
So it's too scary.
Yes.
So it's fear.
Mm-hmm.
Fight or flight. People have decided to fight.
Yes, it's fear. There's only two main forces, as you well know, that drive consciousness and higher thinking, and those two forces are love and fear.
Love and fear. Now, okay, fear being everything, fear encompassing everything that hinders higher levels of thought.
Correct.
And love being, we're not talking about Hollywood romance love here. Love just being everything that elevates you to a higher level of thinking, a higher consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not the media definition of love, and that's a really deep.
Yeah,
that's really deep stuff.
Love.
Yeah, agape, the old Greek term, which, according to the Greek dictionary, means self-sacrificial love. to be completely honest with you, though I understand that much, I don't believe that I'm in a position to speak on those two real world dynamics. You should defer to Mark Passio for that.
Yeah, that takes us in a different. We want to stay a little bit more focused here on the quote ideology of authority.
Right. But it does, you're right in
It's hard
saying
not
that
to go off in these tangents.
Well, because it is. It's a fear.
Yes.
It's even from the other side of the spectrum, for those who do want control, say the police, there's still a measure of fear. But in that fear, with that particular hemisphere of imbalance in the brain, they're reverting back to the opposite of the other side of the spectrum for the R complex, which is fight. I think that a psychological argument could be that, you know, these people have a lack of control in their own lives, so they try to exert it on others. I mean, you look at these soldiers, you look at the police, these politicians, their personal lives are a mess. I mean, these guys got some real serious problems, and the majority of people involved in them would describe them as control freaks, and it's no reason that they chose that kind of profession where they would go out and institute that same exact personal inadequacy that they perceive in themselves on other people, obviously overcompensating for it and doing what's a violation of natural law.
So let's debunk this idea of authority.
Okay.
Now,
I just showed that the federal government had no authority over whether or not I possessed or ingested this.
Let's look at this from a few different angles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's going to tie into this a good bit is natural law. If you watched one of our other shows, we've talked about natural law a lot.
At length, yes.
So if you're confused, go back and watch that. Now, the natural law, it's in effect, and it's real, and it's absolute.
All the time.
What about authority? Now, let's give some examples.
Okay. Well, first, let me just say this before you get too far into it, because I know we covered a little bit of that in an audio broadcast we did, which has not been uploaded yet. Because authority doesn't exist, we have police. Now, allegedly there exists an authority to enact laws, and those laws are enforced by the police on behalf of this system designed to give credence to this authority. Because authority does not actually exist, the only thing that we have left is the force to enforce that misconceived authority. Authority is an idea of what somebody wants to do to control somebody else. And because in a physical sense, an idea has no power at all, because it's an idea, it's intangible, right? These people who hold this idea have created a system to where if you do not do what is necessary to fulfill this idea that they have to control you, they're going to enforce it. They're going to force it on you by violent enforcement. You understand what I mean? So there is no actual authority, because authority is an idea. The only thing that truly exists in the five-sensory, three-dimensional world that we live in is the use of force to try to create the results that fit within that idea for whatever those who want to control you with those ideas.
There seems to be a a conflict there, because the majority of people think that this is such a good idea that we need this external control to keep society in line, obedient.
Okay.
But on the other hand, most people you ask will say, you know, fuck the police, or this or that, or they completely disagree with being controlled. Why is such a... I just don't understand. You know, people 1 minute are completely on the side of the police, but on the other hand, they don't like being policed.
Well, it comes down to this. Let me just say, first and foremost, we've all heard the old adage, the road to hell was paved with good intentions. I'll say no more on that. When it comes to these people and supporting the law enforcement agencies, these are people who want to be led. These are people who have been socially engineered into believing this ideology that people need to be led. But ultimately it all comes down to one word, and that word is ownership.
Ownership.
Ownership. And the angle that I'm coming at this from is a very simple question. Who owns you?
Who owns me? I own me. Absolutely, I own myself.
Anytime
I have dominion.
you have dominion, you own yourself, you're sovereign. If nothing else in this world we can own, it has to be ourselves. We can never give up that freedom, we can never give up that authority, and I hate using that word, and we'll show progressively through this episode how to get away from using that word. The fact of the matter remains that if you decide that you are going to you're going to buy into this lie of authority, then you are going to give your ownership over to somebody else and give them justification, or you're going to create a right where it doesn't exist. You are going to give them the authority to dictate how you dress, how you walk, what you have in your house, what you can possess, what you can say, what you can read, what you can do in any and all facets of your life. So it simply comes down to a matter of ownership. If you don't own yourself, somebody else does. It's black and white. If I don't own this mouse, somebody else does. Black and white. Ownership.
So, how is it even possible, say just me and you sitting here, is it even possible for me to give ownership of myself over to you?
No, it's not.
Well, why is that? I just said it.
Because
okay, here it is. You can have it.
Because your question doesn't really exist.
My question doesn't exist.
No.
You heard it.
And I'll tell you why. This is the same analogy.
I'll play devil's advocate here a little bit.
This is the same analogy. I'll use the same analogy again that I've used before. When my daughter doesn't want to eat her vegetables, she says, no, I don't want to eat those vegetables. I want her to eat vegetables because I know what the nutritional value of vegetables are. And my own personal taste, I think they're pretty good. So I tell her, knowing that she likes corn, I'll say, I'm going to make broccoli or I'm going to make corn. Which one do you want?
Mm-hmm.
She's going to choose corn. I'm giving her the illusion of choice.
Yeah. Simple dialectic mechanics.
Because it's the same exact analogy for your question.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a matter of whether or not she's eating corn or broccoli or any differences that may be involved in
She
those
ate a
two.
vegetable.
The fact of the matter is that she ate a vegetable. So when you
She
ask
didn't
me,
want to begin with.
and she didn't want to begin with. So and that's a political discussion. So when you ask me, well, what if I give you the right to rule me and have authority over me? Can I do that? The question, obviously we have a problem with voting because in voting you give up your right to govern yourself and you give it to this candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're asking the question from the same perspective. If I was the candidate of authority, politically speaking, can you give up your right to govern yourself and give me the authority to do it? No, you can't, and I'll tell you why.
All right.
Because that's not what you're doing. What you're doing is trying to give me the right to control somebody else. You're trying to give me the right to own somebody else. You're trying to give me the authority to own somebody else. And you don't have that right. You don't have the right to own somebody else. You don't have the right to govern somebody else. So no, remove yourself from the equation. You cannot give somebody else the authority, which would be me, to rule somebody else, which would be you.
Well, I don't want you to rule my neighbors, just me. Just, decide what's right.
That's still... Now let me get back in the view here, this narrow view. You're still not giving me the right to govern you. You're giving me the right to govern somebody other than me.
You
And
can
you don't
you
have...
can only govern yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's it. You don't have the right to tell me I have the right to govern you, which, from my perspective, is going to be somebody else. That's the important. That is the question. So no, you cannot, because you don't have the right to govern somebody else. Because you don't have the right to own somebody else.
So that brings up moving into the next portion of this. What if a group of people, what if me and 10 other people decide that we know what's better for you than what you do, and so we're going to we're gonna make those decisions for you, decide what you need to eat.
Well, that sounds like actions of the government. Are we talking about in an anarchist society or in society as it currently stands?
No, just as it stands. Just very, very simple, not leaving the government out of it. Just me and 10 other people are going to decide that collectively that you probably shouldn't wear hats anymore. You're not allowed to do that.
Well, let me ask you this one simple question. Do you and those 10 other people have an understanding of natural law, or are you still
Natural
rooted
law.
in the ideology of man's law and a misconceived notion of authority?
Authority, that's it. We're going to have the authority because we're a majority and you're a minority.
Okay.
So majority rules, right?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably talk to you guys about natural law first and get you to understand that this isn't the way the real world works. And then if you decide that you don't want to listen to that, I'm going to continue wearing hats. Now, if you guys are statists and authoritarians who don't understand natural law and rights and morals,
Okay.
and you feel like you are going to, that you're in a position of authority that doesn't really exist, but you have the means to enforce actions that will fulfill this idea that you have, and you come at me with violence, then in accordance with natural law and what I am rightfully entitled as a human being who owns myself to do, I am going to defend myself against that perpetuation of violence geared towards me by any means necessary.
And you wouldn't be wrong for doing that.
I would not be wrong for doing that because everything that I did was in accordance with natural law and moral human right.
So what if some cop decides he wants to try to arrest me for jaywalking? Something that clearly is no harm to anybody. Do I have the right to fight back against the forcibly trying to be detained?
Yes, you do. Absolutely. You have the right to take whatever measures are necessary to ensure your own safety, freedom, and liberty.
You brought up your daughters here a minute ago.
I did. Yeah, I like to talk about them from time to time. They're great.
Oh yeah.
You know that.
They're awesome kids. Do you have authority over them?
Nope.
No, you don't.
I sure wish I did, because if I did, I wouldn't be disciplining them, would I?
Well, how do you discipline them? You have to have authority to discipline them, right?
No, they just have to believe that I have authority. I certainly don't. You know, if you asked any kid, or
Okay.
any person, you know, we've all been kids before.
Yeah.
You look back and you say, "Did you always do what your mom and dad told you?" You say, "No, I didn't."
Absolutely not.
You know, and I know as a parent.
Should I have a few times? Yeah.
Yeah, probably should have I should have listened to them most of the time. You know, a lot of times they were right. You know, and I find myself in the same situation now. You know, I know that my children don't always do what I tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't control a human being. There's only so much aspects of their actions that you can dictate. But here's the deal.
But you must want them to do what you tell them, or else you wouldn't tell them what to do.
Absolutely, of course. So I'll use this example.
That doesn't come from authority.
No, it doesn't, and I'll tell you why. If my daughter doesn't eat all of her dinner,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make her sit at the table until I decide that I'm tired of telling her, you know, hey, stay there at the table.
Yeah.
When I want to go to bed, or, you know, whatever the case may, however long it is. I could tell her, yeah, sit there. But it's not because I have the authority to. It's because she is afraid of the discipline that will follow if she doesn't obey that authority. It's not that the authority actually exists. It's now, let's say I don't spank my children. You know, I have 2 girls. I find all I have to do is raise my voice or change the octaves in it a little bit, and, you know, they snap right to attention. If I was to spank my child
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't listen to me, then her sitting at that table while I tell her to stay there, she's going to do that not because the authority exists that makes her stay there. It's because of the fear that she has that if she doesn't do it, she's going to get punished. Now, if we were to use the term authority for this, it's an idea that I have. My idea is that in relation to her not finishing her dinner, I want her to sit at the table until it's done, or sit there and stare at it. That's an idea. The only way that I can make that ideal come true is by enforcing it.
Why do it at all? If there's really no authority, and if you don't want to have authority over another human being, why do all that? Why does somebody, you know, why does somebody want to, under threat of fear, make their children do something that they don't want to do at all?
Well, in that situation, in that context, because we as parents have been on this planet longer, we've learned from a lot more of our own mistakes, and it's our obligation
Mm-hmm.
to pass that experience on to those who haven't had them yet.
Is that superiority?
Not at all. That's
No?
wisdom. Wisdom is what we do with the knowledge and experiences that we have.
Is it indoctrination a little bit?
I've wondered that. There's times when I send my daughter to her room. Am I conditioning her to a lifestyle of prison?
Yeah, I don't know.
Of course I'm not, because if prisons didn't exist, then that wouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
If such a gross violation of natural law wasn't already in effect, then nobody in their childhood would have that reference to associate, you know, the experience of being restricted to your room. It wouldn't be a thing. You know, so why would I do that? Because I want her to sit at the table and I want her to eat her vegetables, because I know the value of nutrition and she doesn't. But ultimately, regardless of whether or not somebody was to say, no, you have complete authority over your children, I still am limited in the results that I can produce by exercising control over somebody else. Because I'll tell you what, she will outweight you. You can leave it for the next day and she will not eat it. She's like her old man in that sense, and I appreciate that. And someday she will too. But the fact of the matter is that I can make her sit at that table, but I cannot make her eat those vegetables or that meat that she doesn't want to eat. and it doesn't matter how much authority I have. You could get Donald Trump or the Supreme Court Justice in my house.
Mm-hmm.
These people who have more authority than anybody else in the world, and they're not going to get her to eat that fucking pulled pork. It's not happening.
So what's it all for?
It's
Personal gain.
Yeah, personal gain. It's all for naught.
Personal gain, but the
It's
difference.
not for us.
No,
it's not
it's
for us.
it's not for us. But and I want to touch on personal gain because I can already see the comments coming and I can already see the red flags flying up in somebody's head. The difference in personal gain that I'm talking about in this example is the relation of a parent to a child. In that sense, my personal gain is not malicious. My personal gain is that I love my children and I want them to go to bed with full tummies and I want them to have all of the proper nutrients that their body needs to be as healthy as possible. Now, when you're talking about in a political or legal sense, it has absolutely nothing to do with your better interests. It has nothing to do with this misconceived ideal of common good. It has nothing to do with your health. This control and this authoritarian lie exists solely for the purpose of restricting everything that you do because there's laws in relation to those actions that come with consequences of either jail time or imprisonment, which is funded by tax money, or these rehabilitative programs from these court-approved agencies that is generated by tax money, for restitution, which is money generated by a personal taxpayer, and they're paying for an alleged crime or a violation of a authoritarian-based law. Or it comes down to what did I say? Restitution. It comes down to court fees. It comes down to fines. It's all of that stuff is designed not for the betterment of mankind or the individual or society as a whole, but strictly for the purpose of generating revenue and lining the pockets of those in charge who will do everything that they possibly can to another human being to make a fucking buck.
To keep you obedient, to keep you an obedient worker.
That's it.
Because you're owned.
A worker.
Your purpose is to run the machines,
right.
Pay the taxes,
right.
Run the machines that run something else that's for somebody else's benefit.
Right. And it's funny, I want to take a small segue here. I want to talk to you a little bit about something. I told you I was listening to KVI 570, and I think it was the Kirby Wilbur show.
Yeah.
At that time yesterday, there was a guy filling in for him. I think his name was Brian Phillips. Brian something, he was out of Los Angeles, broadcasting out of Los Angeles.
Williams, I think.
Yeah, it may have been, yeah. He said something to the extent that there are certain things that should be kept secret. The city of Seattle this last year instituted a tax for the purchases of pistols only to anybody living within the city limits of Seattle. And I think there was only something like 15 or 16 actual sales at gun shops in Seattle.
When did that happen?
That was just within the last year.
I think I heard about that.
I think it was
applies to ammunition too.
End of 2000. Yes, that very same law. So they claimed that what that money was going to be used for was I can't, damn it, I can't remember what they said the money was going to be used for. But when the facts came out, there was only 16 pistol purchases in 2016 in the city limits of Seattle. So that means that everybody else went out of the city of Seattle where they didn't have to pay that tax. So
not a good place to open up a gun shop.
No, I guess not.
You won't make much business.
But the city of Seattle has refused to release the exact number of how much tax revenue was generated from those sales within the city limits, under the guise that they didn't want to potentially declassify or put out into the public any personal taxpayers' money, which we're not asking for that. We want to know how much money was generated, but they refused. And so this guy filling in on this conservative talk radio, he said, well, you know, the taxpayers have a right to know what their tax money is being spent on and how much of it is being generated and how much of it's going here and how over there. But then he said, however, there are some things that do need to remain secret. You know, national security information needs to remain secret. And then he went on to say that police operations and tactics need to remain secret.
Oh boy.
So we have let's look at it this way: police, lawful authorities, law enforcers. Okay, the federal government has law enforcers too. The IRS, the marshals, the federal marshals, the DEA, the FBI, even the CIA. All these different agencies that are law enforcement agencies. They're federal law enforcement agencies. So I pose the question of this: you think that taxes should be made available to the people, but the actions of those who would come to do harm on you if you don't pay those taxes should remain secret, even when those tactics and those agencies are funded by taxpayer dollars?
What do you expect when they're forcibly taking your money, something they're robbing you of what you've earned, and you expect them to just
Right.
what do you expect?
What I want is if the tax expenditures that the government utilizes and makes needs to be made available to the people, then so do the tactics of those who would come and get you for not paying those taxes. Those need to be made available too. That's a segue. That's just something that was bothering me. Back to authority. Sorry.
Yes, the authority to tax, the levy taxes.
Oh, I think you had something for where's that contract? Where's that
Yeah,
law that you drafted up?
Yeah,
You drafted up an interesting law today.
Yeah, I took me a while. I really took a long time in making this, and I put a lot of thought into this.
Okay.
And I wrote it up really quaint and succinct, and
Very direct. No room for misinterpretation here.
yeah. And this is what I wrote up. I'm gonna show it to you here. If you can't see, that says "pay me," and that little squiggly line, that's supposed to be my signature.
Oh, fuck. Somebody's screwed.
It's just ink and paper, and I did
Okay.
that. And so I'm going to show it to you.
I see it.
You're bound. You're bound up. You got to pay me.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.
And I've got a force of Gestapo that will come and make you do it, or imprison you.
Okay. Well, let me see this. What is this? Oh. Well, excuse me, sir, but this is a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's parchment with ink on it.
What's this piece of paper going to do to me if I don't pay you?
The paper?
Yeah, this piece of paper that you wrote this law on, what's this going to do?
Oh, the paper's not going to do anything. See, my signature's on there, so I can employ anybody else to make you.
What's
do
that
it.
signature going to do to me?
That signature?
Yeah.
Oh, nothing. That's just. That
So
just
this
signifies that's my personal mark that says that I am the one that drew this up, and I am the one with the authority to carry out this.
So this paper has authority over me? This piece of paper?
That's what I would like you to believe.
So this piece of paper has authority over me as a human being?
Not even the paper, just the ink on it. I could have chose a completely different piece of paper, right?
I don't think that this has any authority at all. What's it going to do?
that much, is it?
But you know what I am? You know what I am afraid of? I'm afraid that, like that document said, you had a certain number of people that
Mm-hmm.
are going to come here and they're going to enforce the idea that was on that paper through certain means. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
actual ink and the signatures and the paper
Mm-hmm.
and the ideas on them don't have any authority at all, right?
No, they do not.
But the force does exist
Force
and
is
will
real.
be used,
It exists in nature, yeah.
and it's going to implement actions against me in order to try to fulfill the idea that's on that piece of paper that has no authority.
Yeah, that's the way it works. That's
Do we need to take a minute for anybody to digest what really just happened right there?
That's the way it works. You just
I
write
guess
something
it's-
down on a piece of parchment with a quill, fancy like, and with some bunch of fancy shit on it.
Never mind that, you know,
Call
this
them-
this legislative authority
Call
was
it a bill.
written on some fucking piece of sheepskin paper back in 1776, and there's no timeline prescribed on it. There's actually nobody specifically named that has this authority. You know, I mean, I got a bill for my car the other day in the mail, and I looked at it and it said Santander Consumer. And I wanted to call down to this. I'm assuming that it's a bank. I want to know how a building owns my car.
Yeah, a collection of things.
I just,
A building
And
with
so,
some desks and
who is-
some computers,
who is Santander? I mean, this is
inkwells.
nothing. My, you know, this is the same argument that we've wanted to use in court cases. Okay, well, you know, the state of Washington versus Bloody Bill.
Yeah.
Okay, let's subpoena the state of Washington now. Let's get him up on the stand. Who is he? Who is she? What's the driver's license number? What's the social security number? What's the birth? Where's the birth certificate? Who
Oh, of
is the
course,
state of Washington?
Oh, what do they say? Well, they got this prosecutor in there that's representing.
They're representing. But
the
here's
state of Washington.
here's the thing,
but
though.
who's the judge representing?
Who's the judges? They're not
Is the
representing
judge-
anybody.
Is the judge also part of the government of Washington State?
But here's the question:
Is
if you're the
is there-
prosecuting attorney and you're saying that you're acting on behalf of Washington State and you're representing Washington State, well, here I am. I'm a resident of Washington State, and obviously you're not representing me because we're not agreeing on the situation.
Yeah.
So what am I? I'm going to call the prosecutor on the stand, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask him questions specific to the case, which obviously he's not a witness of and wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole case relies on this.
Not to mention
This
the conflict
misconceived
of interest,
authority.
because the judge is also a statist.
They're all, you know, they're all in each other's employ. So I mean that's just as simply as invalid as this piece of paper, because it all deals with
Mhm.
these laws and this idea of authority that was
Yeah.
written on a piece of paper, but yet at every single turn is contradictory.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's all designed to keep you under control, keep you obedient, and keep you slaving away to pay their debt.
When in reality, none of this authority at any of its levels exist. The police have no authority. The courts have no authority. The prosecutor has no authority. The legislature has no authority. Authority is nothing more than an idea of how to control people, how to manipulate people, and the way that these ideas are actualized philosophically or even physically is through the use of force. There is no authority,
Which is
only
against
the
natural
existence
law.
of force, which is against natural law all of the fucking time.
Yeah.
You have no authority to
initiation of force is against natural law.
Correct.
Period.
Correct. Let's explain that. Initiation of force is against natural law always. It's always wrong to force somebody else to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now people are already going to say, well, you're forcing your daughter to sit at the table. Right?
I don't see any threat of violence.
There's no threat of violence because I've already said that I don't violate
you don't
my
use
children.
you don't.
I don't use capital or punitive punishment against my children. Am I really forcing them to do something? No, because there is no threat
She
of
could
violence.
get up and just walk away.
She could, and you know what? She'd probably have to stay in her room, but that's not initiating violence on her. We're talking about the initiation.
She could just walk right out of her room.
She could. But she literally, she could. She can. She has 2 legs. She has the right to move about.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the fear of initiation of force. That's where the idea of authority comes from. And it's always wrong to initiate force. So when a police officer, a Nazi, puts those red, white, and blue, freedom flying colors on in your rearview mirror and forces you off the road, sure,
yeah, everybody's about red, white, and blue until they're flashing in your rearview mirror.
Exactly. You're going to pull over, the majority of people pull over because they're in fear of the threat of force.
Yeah,
being run off the road, being shot, being beat up. And there's people that don't fear that force, that initiation of force.
Most of them are dead.
Most of them, most of them are dead or, locked away for however long and brandished with all these kind of records that, put them in a socio-economical position to recidivate because, there's nothing left to them, but we can get into that at a later date. But
Force something that's as non-violent as maybe forgetting to use your turn signal.
Right. Simply as something...
That's a non-violent thing to do.
And it doesn't affect anybody.
But they're gonna bring violence on you for doing it.
Correct. And the correlation with the example with my children is there is no threat of force. You're going to stay at the table because it's your punishment for not eating your dinner. When I decide you can go to bed, you can go to bed. If you're going to get up and walk away and go to bed anyways, go to your room, get off the table, am I going to do anything about it? No, I'm not going to come at you physically. Don't tell my children that. But realistically speaking, the reality of the situation is this.
Okay.
In that scenario, there's no threat of force. In other scenarios, when it involves laws or agents of the state, it always involves the threat of force.
Yeah, that's all they have.
Anytime
anybody has contact with the police, and don't try to tell me otherwise, you're always in fear of, because you could get in trouble, and you don't want to do that because of why. It's just natural. It's self-preservation. You don't want to be harmed.
Right. You don't want an armed man walking up to your window.
It's their job. You see the cop, they've got all this stuff on them, right? They got the big belt and all kinds. All that stuff is designed to hurt people. They got tasers, pepper spray, a handgun. They got either a
handcuff to restrain you so that you can't defend yourself.
Yeah, in their car they've either got a rifle or a shotgun or both, and they've got a radio and they've got backup immediately.
And somebody else will come and help them harm you further.
Yeah, and they've got further devices for keeping you under control, or harming you, killing you.
It's always the threat of force.
Yeah,
not the presence of authority. It's the threat of force.
Yeah. That's what this boils down to. Authority is the threat of force.
Correct.
It's like going back to what I said before about how come so many people are, police exist because so many people are for the police. They're on their side. Yeah, police. Like you see these where police are beating up protesters and all the comments. yeah, you get them protesters. Yay, police.
Mhm.
Hooray for the police. But then, everybody I've ever asked personally, about the police say, yeah, book them guys. Well, which one is it? Which one is it really? Because I'm not seeing it here.
No, there's certainly no evidence of that across America.
No,
You know, the
you get
media
pulled
would-
over and get a ticket for your license plate light is out. Man, this is bullshit. Okay, well, is it bullshit or is it not bullshit? Are you for the police or are you against the police?
Well, me personally, I am against them. You know, I will say that within the context of the
Bunch of
society
fucking hypocrites. Sorry.
that we currently live in, the police do have their necessity. In situations like, child abductions, I wouldn't hesitate to call the police.
Okay.
But I wouldn't just be sitting around in my house either. I would demand to be made privy of all information, and if not, I would track down my own leads. Now that's relevant because the society that we live in, they have all of the information. They have all of the computer systems. They have all of the confidential, information on other individuals that they can network together and do this investigation, and that, they can do this kind of stuff. But in a society that we're talking about, that we're for, people would also have the same ability to do something like that, but it just doesn't exist at this time.
It's, question I bring up: Can there be a private investigation firm?
Absolutely. There can be an open source sharing
somebody
center
goes
of
missing,
information.
well, can you investigate this inside the bounds of natural law? Of course. Figure this out. Private eyes. Pet dick.
Oh, Ace Ventura. Yeah, actually, there is. It's very possible, very, very possible for something like that to happen. What you would need is something like a center of information where people would be working there, obviously, and if you had a situation like this, you could go to those people. And all of the information that the police currently have would be open source, it would be available, and people who are victims of these kind of atrocities would be made privy to every single available detail. Right now, it doesn't happen that way. The FBI comes over and they've got, these people over here in Quantico and over in DC and up at the Seattle Renton office. They've got these supercomputers running, they've got all these detectives and special agents, then they got the people in your house and they're communicating with the cops out here on the street. There's absolutely no reason to believe that other citizens couldn't be made privy of that information, and that, for lack of a better term, a militia could be, could be erected at that time to go out and find this missing person. To go out and conduct this investigation.
On the other hand of that, now, when you're brought into this world, are you given any guarantees?
Of course not.
You're not guaranteed any kind of safety, anything like that?
Not other than what you could procure for yourself.
So, it's just thrown out here that, and a lot of people might not agree with this, that there's no guarantee in life. You're not guaranteed to life. Something happens, it happens. You can't bubble wrap everything.
Do people give up? I shouldn't say do people give up.
I'm not saying.
Do people buy into the lie of authority then because they want more guarantees on life?
Yes, absolutely. Puts more bubble wrap on it, puts more packing peanuts on life. When really that's just smoke and mirrors. Police aren't going to protect you.
They don't even have any lawful obligation to protect you. The Supreme Court's upheld that for over 30 years in hundreds of cases.
Yeah, hundreds of cases. They're not there to protect you.
No, they're not. Their
Fucking
obligation.
Cruiser says to serve and protect themselves.
Everybody always thought that meant for them. You know.
Yeah, no, that's.
You know, I mean, I look
Sorry,
at
that's bullshit, folks.
You know, this authority is so absolute, and its implications are so far-reaching that it even deters, you know, quote-unquote criminals from taking advantage of, you know, some woman in an alleyway. You know, nothing's ever going to happen. You could walk down an alleyway naked, ladies, and, you know, nothing's going to happen to you because of this existence of authority, and the authority says, no, nobody's going to commit a crime against you because we have these laws in place. Okay, well, when something does happen to you, and you're one of those people who just jump on this police-loving authoritarian bandwagon, you know, let's see if the police can get there in the time that a violent act occurs. They're investigators, they come after the fact, and the most important thing that anybody has to realize in life is that the only person who can be everywhere that you are all the time is you.
The world is a dangerous place, and the only person responsible for keeping you safe and alive is you.
Yeah, you can't give that to somebody else. You just can't. You can't give it to the police. You can't give it to the state. You can't give it to the government. Especially under this guise of authority. It doesn't work because it doesn't exist.
Situationally, you know, you could see somebody being harmed and try to stop it.
Correct?
But that's situationally. You know, that's proximity.
That doesn't mean that you had, and we talked about this earlier.
You know, just trying to do something right, but
if
that's not always the case.
If I was robbing an old woman out front of a gas station, and you intervened and stopped me.
Yeah, stop you. You see that?
It's not because, yeah, I've seen that. It was a very deadly move. It's not because it's not a matter of whether or not you had the authority to stop me. It's a matter of whether or not you did what was right or you did what was moral. Whether you did what was moral or whether you allowed something immoral to happen.
It does go hand in hand. If it's right, it's moral. If it's wrong, it's immoral.
Exactly.
There's no there's no crossover there.
So if somebody were to ask you after that situation, you know, you got a group of people coming up to say that this is a society here, it's a community of rules without rulers, and you get, you know, 20, 30 armed citizens come up here and they approach you and they say, hey, why did you just perpetrate violence against that man? You would say, no, he violated natural law and perpetrated violence against this old woman and tried to steal from her. I intervened, stopped it. Did you have the authority to do that? That's not the question. What I did was right. I did what was right. That's all it is. Now, people like to confuse authority with right. Because they think that the laws are based on rights. They think that the laws are based on morals. They think that the laws are what is right and wrong. And that's synonymous with the authority to enforce those laws. But that's not the case.
Yeah,
it's not a matter of authority, it's a matter of right.
It's what they say, just to get you to follow along with their little scam.
Agreed. What are we going to talk about in our next show? You know, we said we were waiting for comments, and then we found out we lost the video, and then we were going to do a show on the comments.
Right, yeah, we lost that whole show.
Right.
So, yeah, we're at the 1 hour mark here. It looks like we didn't have anything going on in the live chat. Looks like we do have one person watching.
Maybe that's us.
Well, I don't know, but whoever you are, hey, thanks for tuning in. Please feel free to leave comments, and but please be civil. You know, we're not interested in flame wars. You know, whatever political nonsense you have to say if you're conservative or Republican or Democrat or something like that. Don't care. That's corner broccoli. I just to I wanted to bring up this whole thing that's going on right now with Trump and the Affordable Care Act
Oh yeah.
being shut down.
Yeah,
That
just
whole
today
thing.
they canceled everything they'd been promising for the last year and the year and a half.
And I said it before when no, it was after the Affordable Care Act was done that I was a firm believer that the Affordable Care Act was going to be no matter what.
Right.
Even I don't believe elections are real, but even if Mitt Romney had won the election,
Yeah, he would have still had Romney Care.
we would have Romney Care right now.
Yeah, or what are we going to have? Rhino or Trump Care or all this? You're going to have affordable.
It's no surprise. I mean, the Affordable Care Act's not going anywhere.
No, but Republicans did a really great job today.
Well, they did a great job convincing a bunch of dumbbells that they were going to get rid of it. When really
Yeah,
they
no
weren't.
kidding.
They had no aspirations of it whatsoever.
No. I mean, but hey, there's a big difference between broccoli and corn, right?
Yeah. Yeah, what are they, like vegetables or something?
Yeah, that's what I hear. Anyway, if we get any comments, any questions, anything that somebody wants to touch on, or something like that, down in the comment section before we do our next video, then we'll just do the next video.
Yeah, we'll address those
based on the comments.
We'll address those live, and I think next time we need to announce when we're going to go live. We didn't do that this time. This is our first time going live.
Right.
On YouTube. So next time we'll announce when we're going to go live. That way you can see us live, and there's a live chat, so you can chat with us, and we'll be keeping our eye on that.
Yep, you see the page right here.
And so we can address questions or comments on the fly.
Exactly.
In real time.
I mean, this is the truth hour. This is real
Truth
news,
hours.
Real people, real truth.
We got nothing to hide. We're not afraid. Tell us what you're thinking. If you got a beef, if you think we're wrong. Like I said, please be civil. Don't just ask us a question. Like, what about this? What about that? Okay, we'll discuss that.
I think it's a good way to go. Get more in touch with our listeners. Create something that's a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
Or if you don't want something personal, fuck you. Just watch our videos anyways.
Yeah,
they're
and
informative.
that's the other caveat is get as offended as you like, to quote Passio there. Get as offended as you like. We're not here to be your friend. And we're also not looking for followers. We're not. I mean, follow the page, but we're not here to be.
Yeah, we're not leaders. We don't have positions of authority.
We're not here to be your authority. So with that, I think we're done for this show.
I think we are too. So I'm gonna click back over here.
I am Bloody Bill.
And I am.
Here is
3%er.
3%er over there.
We'll see you on the next show.